Right now in Beaverton, Oregon, the people running the most iconic sportswear brand on the planet are staring at a set of numbers that would have seemed unthinkable just 5 years ago. Nike stock is down 77% from its all-time high. A company that once defined what it meant to be cool, to be fast, to win, is losing. And the story of how it got here involves a billion-dollar strategic gamble, a CEO who misled investors, shelf space handed over to competitors on a silver platter, and a Chinese market that may never come back. This is what's really happening with Nike. But it's also a story about how the biggest brands in the world can lose their way, and what happens when competitors are ready to take the space they leave behind, and it affects all of us. To understand how Nike ended up here, you have to go back to November 2021. Nike stock hit $179.10 per share, its all-time peak. The company was coming off years of dominance. The swoosh was everywhere, on NBA courts, in hip-hop culture, on the feet of the fastest people on earth. Revenue was strong. The brand felt untouchable. And then came the bet that changed everything. In June 2020, Nike CEO John Donahoe launched what the company called the Consumer Direct Acceleration Strategy, or CDA. The pitch was simple and seductive. Cut out the middleman. Instead of selling through retailers like Foot Locker, JD Sports, and DSW, Nike would sell directly to consumers through its own stores, app, and website. Direct sales margins were significantly higher, around 50%, compared to 30–35% through wholesale, so the math looked compelling on paper. More money per sale, more data, more control over the brand experience. Nike didn't just adjust its wholesale mix, it walked away. The company exited hundreds of retail partnerships. Foot Locker, one of Nike's most important distribution channels for decades, was dramatically cut. Smaller regional retailers lost their Nike accounts entirely. At the time, this was celebrated as visionary. Nike was going to build a direct relationship with consumers. The future was digital. The future was theirs. What Donahoe and his team got badly wrong was this. Wholesale isn't just distribution, it's discovery. Think about it. When a teenager walks into a sneaker store and browses the wall, they're not always looking for a specific shoe. They're comparing, they're discovering. They're being influenced by what's sitting on the shelf right next to what they plan to buy. When Nike pulled its products out of those stores, it didn't eliminate the demand for that shelf space. It just vacated it. And competitors moved in immediately. On Running, a Swiss brand that barely anyone in the US had heard of in 2020, went from roughly $330 million in annual revenue to $3.71 billion by fiscal year 2025. That's over 0% growth in 5 years. Hoka, owned by Deckers Outdoor, went from around $352 million to $2.2 billion over the same period, nearly a five-fold increase. Both brands built their entire American presence at exactly the shelf space Nike voluntarily gave away. Meanwhile, in June 2024, a class action lawsuit was filed accusing Nike CEO John Donahoe and CFO Matt Friend of misleading investors about the success of the CDA strategy. The lawsuit alleged that executives repeatedly promoted the strength of the direct-to-consumer model when, in reality, it was unable to generate sustainable revenue growth. The complaint was filed on behalf of investors who bought Nike stock between March 2021 and March 2024, the exact window during which the strategy was being publicly celebrated while failing internally. By late 2024, the damage was undeniable. Donahoe was out. Nike brought back Elliott Hill, a company veteran, to run a turnaround he called Win Now. Hill inherited bloated inventory, broken wholesale relationships, a weakened position in performance running, and a brand that had lost its cultural edge. But if the strategy failure was bad, what was happening in China was worse. Greater China had been one of Nike's most reliable growth engines for years. Then it started sliding and kept sliding. In the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2026, Nike's Greater China revenue fell 12% on a reported basis to $1.29 billion and 17% on a currency-neutral basis. Footwear revenue in the region dropped 13% in that same quarter. Local Chinese brands like Anta Sports and Li Ning had spent years quietly building product quality and cultural relevance with Chinese consumers. Geopolitical tension between the US and China made things worse. Nike was caught in a market it once owned, being systematically outmaneuvered, and then came December 2025. On the 19th of December 2025, Nike shares fell more than 10% in a single trading session, wiping out billions of dollars in market capitalization in one day. The trigger was Nike's fiscal second quarter 2026 earnings report, released the evening before. On the surface, the numbers looked survivable. Revenue came in at $12.43 billion, a 1% year-over-year increase, beating lowered analyst expectations. Earnings per share of $0.53 also beat estimates. But the internal story was brutal. Net income had fallen 32% year-over-year. Gross margins had contracted 300 basis points. And management revealed that newly implemented U.S. tariffs were expected to cost the company $1.5 billion on an annualized basis. The 11% drop that followed wasn't just about one quarter. It was a verdict. Investors had watched guidance cut after guidance cut. They had seen the DTC strategy fail, wholesale relationships broken and slowly rebuilt, and China numbers deteriorate quarter after quarter. The stock collapse was the moment the market stopped giving Nike the benefit of the doubt. And then came another twist, one that illustrates exactly how complicated Nike's recovery really is. Those same Q4 results hide something the headlines didn't show. On the surface, the numbers looked like a win. Revenue came in at $10.97 billion versus an analyst estimate of $10.85 billion. Reported earnings per share of $0.72 crushed the $0.13 estimate. For a moment, it looked like the turnaround was finally showing up in the numbers. It wasn't. Nike had booked $986 million from a one-time recovery of tariffs that the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled invalid in February 2026. Strip that out and adjusted EPS was $0.20. The gross margin of 49.2% that looked so impressive, inflated by roughly 900 basis points from that same tariff refund. The underlying gross margin was approximately 40.3%, nearly unchanged from the prior year. The beat was real, but it was built on a one-time windfall, not on the operating recovery investors needed to see. More damaging than the quarter itself was the guidance. CFO Matthew Friend said on the earnings call that Nike expects first quarter fiscal 2027 revenue to decline in the low to mid-single digits. The second quarter was expected to decelerate further from Q1. CEO Elliott Hill noted that business momentum had actually slowed during the back half of Q4, leading to more discounting, reduced future wholesale orders, and softer consumer traffic. Those were the conditions the company was carrying into the next year of the turnaround. Cost control improved. Inventory under control. On paper, it looks like progress, but paper doesn't sell sneakers. And while Nike is still cleaning up the house on the inside, out there the neighborhood has already changed its address. The competitive picture around Nike is concerning. Adidas has staged a remarkable comeback under CEO Bjorn Gulden, driven by the enduring popularity of silhouettes like the Samba and the Gazelle, with its U.S. market share climbing to nearly 9%. On Holding reported a 24.9% sales increase in its most recent quarter, with gross margins of 65.7%, far above Nike's current underlying levels. Hoka has moved from a niche running shoe to a lifestyle staple worn by everyone from ultramarathoners to hospital workers. Skechers is picking up price-sensitive consumers who are trading down from Nike's premium price points. Every direction Nike looks, a competitor is taking ground. North America is the one genuine bright spot. Wholesale in Nike's home market grew in recent quarters, and total wholesale revenues for the full fiscal year were up 6% on a reported basis. Inventory discipline has also improved, with total inventory flat at $7.5 billion. Elliott Hill has made real progress rebuilding the wholesale relationships that Donahoe spent years dismantling. But the direct channel, the one the entire CDA strategy was built to serve, is still shrinking. Nike brand digital fell 12% in fiscal 2026. Nike-owned stores fell 4%. Total Nike Direct was down 6% for the full year. The brand itself is not broken. Nike's global recognition, its athlete partnerships, its history in sport, none of that has disappeared overnight. But brand recognition is not the same as a turnaround. The Nike name still opens doors. The question is whether what's behind that door can keep up with what's growing outside it. Wall Street is waiting, and Nike knows it. At some point, the company's leadership will need to walk into a room full of investors, look in the eyes of the people who lost money on this fall, and present a credible roadmap showing how the direct channel stops bleeding, how China starts growing again, and how Nike takes back the ground it voluntarily gave away. If they can convince the room, the narrative shifts. If they can't, the stock, already 77% off its peak, could test new all-time lows, from $179 to roughly $40. From the undisputed king of global sportswear to a company fighting to hold the shelf space it once gave away for free, Nike's fall is one of the most instructive corporate stories of this decade. It's about the danger of betting everything on one strategy before proving it works. About what happens when a dominant brand stops paying attention to what's growing on the shelves right next to it. And about how fast competitors that were once an afterthought can become the companies everyone else is chasing. The swoosh is still there. The question every player in the sportswear industry and on Wall Street is asking right now is simple. Can the team underneath it move fast enough to matter? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. And drop a comment below. Do you still believe in Nike? Or do you think the competition has already won this one? See you in the next video.